Students, my name is Niyati Said and thanks for watching Edupedia word videos. My topic for the presentation is the next section of the chapter, Neural Control and Coordination. In my previous section of the presentation, I have already taught you the structure or the architecture of the brain. In this section of the presentation, I'll be teaching you about the three means of the protection of the brain. Okay, so brain, as I have told you, that it is an anterior, highly developed part of the central nervous system. It is soft, it is whitish in color, they are large sized and they are slightly flattened. And brain weighs around 1300 to 1400 gram and measures about 1300 to 1500 cc in volume. The brain, it develops to its full size by the age of 6 years. That means when the human attains the age of 6 years, the brain develops to its full size by that age or by the age of 6 years. And at that age, our brain, it contains about 30,000 million neurons. Okay. Now, the brain is well protected by the following three means. And which are those three means? First is cranium. This is cranium. Okay, this is known as bony brain box. Okay, so the cranium, it is a bony case in the skull, and the brain is lodged inside the cranium, and it is thus protected from the external injuries. Okay, now the third means of protection for the brain is meninges. This is meninges. Okay, these are your meninges. Meninges, the brain is covered by the three membranes called meninges for protection. These are three in number: dura mater, arachnoid membrane and pia mater. Okay, we'll be studying in detail. And third means of protection is cerebrospinal fluid. This sky color fluid is known as cerebrospinal fluid. It is slightly alkaline and clear fluid. It is present in the subarachnoid space. This space is known as subarachnoid space. And it is also present in the cavities of the brain called as ventricles. Okay. Another function of the cerebrospinal fluid, you can say that it absorbs mechanical shock and it prevents injury to brain by forming a protective cushion around it. And another function is that it prevents desiccation of central nervous system and friction between the meninges. These are the meninges. So this cerebrospinal fluid, it prevents desiccation of central nervous system and friction between meninges. And a third function of the cerebrospinal fluid is that it helps in exchange of nutrients, oxygen and carbon dioxide and waste material between nervous tissue and blood. Okay. And please note that if infection occurs in the meninges, then that is known as meningitis. And whereas if the inflammation occurs in the cerebrospinal fluid, then that is known as meningitis 2. Okay. Now let's study in detail what is meninges. Okay, meninges, its singular form is meninges. Okay, it is a three membranous envelope. That means it consists of three membranes. First is pia mater, second is arachnoid mater, and third is your dura mater that surrounds the brain and the spinal cord. Now, what is the function of the meninges? The chief function of the meninges and the cerebrospinal fluid is to protect the central nervous system. Okay. Now we'll study the three membranes of the meninges, that is pia mater, arachnoid and dura mater. See, this is skull. This is your skull. This is your dura mater. This is your arachnoid, and this is the internal one is your pia mater. And what is this? These are the brain tissues. Okay, so the outermost of the three meninges is the dura mater. That is this one. It is a strong, it is thick and dense membrane. As you can see, it is very thick, it is dense, and it is very strong membrane. Why it is so strong? Because it is composed of dense fibrous tissue. This dura mater can be regarded as a sac that envelops the arachnoid, which is this one, arachnoid, and that has been modified to serve several functions. So you can say that dura mater, it is an outer turf and protective meninges made up of fibrous connective tissue. Now comes your arachnoid. Okay, the inner to dura mater comes arachnoid. This is arachnoid membrane. It is a middle meninges and it is thin, vascular, and it is formed of reticular connective tissue. It has spider web-like appendages. As you can see that it has appendages like spider web. This is your arachnoid. Okay, and it is protective and nutritive. The space between dura mater, this is your dura mater, and so the space between dura mater and the arachnoid mater, which is this one, this is the space between dura mater and the arachnoid, is called as subdural space, which is filled with serous fluid. Okay. Now comes your pia mater. This is your pia mater, which is innermost layer. So the pia mater is the meningeal envelope that firmly adheres to the surface of the brain. This is brain. These are the brain tissues. So pia mater is the one that firmly adheres to the surface of the brain and the spinal cord. And it is the innermost layer. It is very thin and it is transparent in nature. It is highly vascularized. That means many vessels are there. Okay, and it is very nutritive also. And over the pia mater and separated from it, a space called subarachnoid space is the second meningeal envelope. That means a space between, you can say, arachnoid membrane, this is your arachnoid membrane, and the pia membrane. The space between is known as subarachnoid space, which is filled with cerebrospinal fluid, which is our second topic, okay, that provides protection to the central nervous system. Okay, I hope these three layers of the brain is clear to all of you now. Dura mater, arachnoid and pia mater. Okay. Now comes our second means of protection of brain. That is your cerebrospinal fluid. It is slightly alkaline and clear fluid. It is present in the subarachnoid space. Subarachnoid space is known as the space between arachnoid membrane and the pia mater. Okay, that is known as subarachnoid space, which is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. And it is present in the cavities of the brain called ventricles. This cerebrospinal fluid, this sky color fluid, is known as cerebrospinal fluid. So this is cerebrospinal fluid. It is secreted by choroid plexus as well as ependymal cells. It is alkaline and it is about 120 ml in an adult. Okay, the quantity of cerebrospinal fluid present in the brain is about 120 ml in average adult. And this cerebrospinal fluid is alkaline in nature. That means it has a pH above 7. Okay, so that's why cerebrospinal fluid is a slightly alkaline and clear fluid which is present in the ventricles of the brain, or it is present in the subarachnoid space. And what is subarachnoid space? Subarachnoid space is a space between arachnoid membrane and the pia mater. Okay. Now, what are the functions of the cerebrospinal fluid? The first function is to protect the brain, okay, or to protect the central nervous system. So the function is to absorb mechanical shocks and prevents injury to brain by forming a protective cushion around it. And the second function is of the cerebral spinal fluid is that it prevents desiccation of central nervous system and friction between the meninges. Meninges, we have already studied that it is made up of three membranous envelopes: dura mater, arachnoid membrane, and pia mater. Okay. Now, the third function of the cerebrospinal fluid is that it helps in the exchange of nutrients, oxygen, carbon dioxide, waste material between nervous tissues and blood. Cerebrospinal fluid, it is also found in the cavities of brain called ventricles. Thus, it maintains equal pressure inside and outside of the brain. So if question asks who maintains the pressure inside and outside of the brain, then the answer is cerebrospinal fluid. That means it maintains the equal pressure inside and outside of the brain and hence maintain its shape. This shape is maintained by the cerebrospinal fluid. As well as it regulates temperature also of the body. Okay. So these are the functions of the cerebrospinal fluid. Now please note that the infection to meninges and cerebrospinal fluid causes inflammation of meninges, which is called as meningitis. Okay, so this was all about the protection means of the brain, in which we have studied cranium, which is a bony case in the skull where the brain is lodged into. Now the second means of protection is meninges, which it is consist of three envelopes such as dura mater, arachnoid membrane, and pia mater. And third means of protection is cerebrospinal fluid, which we just studied. Okay, now in my next section of the presentation we'll be studying about the general structure of the human eye. So till then, stay tuned and keep watching Edupedia Word videos. Thank you.